I never thought I'd be the kind of mother who missed the signs. I'd always prided myself on knowing my daughter. Every mood shift, every hesitation in her voice, every secret she thought she could keep. But standing in that hospital room watching tears stream down Mia's face as she looked at her father lying motionless in that bed, I realized I'd been blind to everything that mattered. The call had come at 2:47 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at the clock, unable to sleep, wondering why David hadn't come home yet. When his name flashed on my phone screen, relief flooded through me, until I heard the unfamiliar voice on the other end. Mrs. Catherine Hendricks, this is Mercy General Hospital. Your husband has been in an accident. The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. David had said he was working late at the firm preparing for a major case. He'd been saying that a lot lately, working late, coming home exhausted, distracted. I'd attributed it to stress, to the pressure of being a senior partner at one of Boston's most prestigious law firms. I'd been understanding, patient, supportive. I'd been an idiot. When I arrived, they told me he'd been found in his car on a quiet residential street in Brookline, slumped over the wheel. The engine was still running. They suspected a heart attack or stroke, but they were running tests. He was stable but unconscious. I called Mia immediately. She was a sophomore at Northeastern, living in a dorm downtown. She answered on the first ring, her voice alert despite the hour. "Mum, what's wrong?" "It's your father. He's in the hospital. You need to come." There was a pause. Too long. Too weighted. "What happened?" "They think it might be his heart. Mia, just get here. Please." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived in 15, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and one of David's old Harvard sweatshirts. She looked younger than her 19 years, her face pale and drawn. When the nurse led us to David's room, Mia stopped in the doorway, her hand gripping the frame so hard her knuckles went white. That's when I saw it. Not just fear or shock, but something else. Something that looked like guilt and grief and resignation, all tangled together. She walked slowly to his bedside, and as she looked down at him, tubes running from his arms, monitors beeping steadily, his usually commanding presence diminished to nothing, she began to cry. Not the gentle tears I expected, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. "Mia, sweetheart." I moved toward her, but she held up a hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though I couldn't tell if she was talking to me or to him. "I'm so sorry. Honey, this isn't your fault. These things happen. You don't understand." She wiped her face with the back of her hand, but the tears kept coming. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago." My heart began to pound. "What are you talking about?" She looked at me then, and I saw terror in her eyes. "Dad made me promise not to say anything. He said it would destroy everything, but I can't keep this inside anymore." Before she could continue, Doctor, Patel entered, a short woman with kind eyes and greying hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Mrs. Hendricks, I have the initial test results. Could we speak privately?" I looked between the doctor and my daughter, torn between two revelations that both felt catastrophic. "Mia, wait here. Don't go anywhere." She nodded, sinking into the chair beside David's bed, her eyes never leaving his face. In the hallway, Dr. Patel's expression was carefully neutral, the kind of neutrality doctors practice when they're about to deliver bad news. "Your husband didn't have a heart attack, Mrs. Hendricks. The toxicology screen showed extremely high levels of opioids in his system, combined with alcohol. If he hadn't been found when he would have died." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "That's impossible. He wouldn't. Was he prescribed any pain medication recently?" "He hurt his back playing tennis about 6 months ago. He saw an orthopedist who gave him something for a few weeks, but that was it." Dr. Patel's expression softened. "Mrs. Hendricks, the levels we found suggest sustained use, not a one-time incident. We're going to need to monitor him closely. There's also evidence of... She hesitated. When the paramedics found him, there was drug paraphernalia in the vehicle, pills scattered on the passenger seat, an empty vodka bottle. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't David. David who ran 5 miles every morning. David who lectured Mia about the dangers of college parties. David who'd built his entire career on being the most prepared, most disciplined, most controlled person in any room. There's something else, Dr. Patel continued. He had a phone in his lap when they found him. It wasn't locked, and the paramedics saw, well, they had to report it. There were messages suggesting he'd been planning to... Another hesitation. It looked like a suicide attempt, Mrs. Hendricks. The word hung in the air between us like something physical, something I could reach out and touch. Suicide. David. The two concepts couldn't exist in the same universe. No, I said firmly, no, you're wrong. David wouldn't. He has everything to live for, his career, his family. Sometimes the people who seem to have everything are the ones who are suffering most, Doctor, Patel said gently. I'm going to recommend psychiatric evaluation once he's stable. For now, you should be with your family. When I returned to the room, Mia was standing at the window, her back to me. The early morning light was starting to creep through the blinds, casting long shadows across the floor. He's going to be okay, I said, my voice hollow even to my own ears, physically at least, but Mia, they said... I couldn't finish the sentence. He was trying to kill himself, Mia said flatly, still not turning around. I know. How could you possibly... Because he told me. She finally turned to face me, and I saw that she'd stopped crying. Now she just looked exhausted, like someone who'd been carrying too much weight for too long. 3 months ago, he told me everything. I sat down slowly, afraid my legs wouldn't hold me. What do you mean, everything? Mia took a deep breath. It started last June. Dad came to my dorm one afternoon, which was weird because he never just showed up without calling first. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. He asked if we could take a walk. I watched my daughter's face as she spoke, trying to reconcile this story with the husband I thought I knew. We went to that park near campus, the one with the duck pond. He was quiet for a long time, and then he just started talking. He told me he'd made a mistake. A terrible mistake. He said about a year ago he'd been handling a case for a pharmaceutical company, something about patent infringement. He met someone, a woman named Simone. The name landed like a punch to my stomach. He had an affair. It's worse than that, Mom. Mia came and sat beside me, taking my hand. Hers was ice cold. Simone was younger, like 26 or something. She worked as a paralegal at the company he was representing. They started sleeping together during the case. It lasted about 3 months, and then Dad ended it. He said it was the worst thing he'd ever done, that he was ashamed, that he'd been weak and stupid. I wanted to pull my hand away, to run from this room and this nightmare, but I couldn't move. Why did he tell you? Why not tell me? Because Simone got pregnant. The world stopped. Everything, the beeping of the monitors, the distant sounds of the hospital, even my own heartbeat seemed to cease. She told him about 2 weeks before he came to see me, said she was keeping the baby, said she didn't want anything from him, not money, not involvement, nothing. She just thought he should know. Dad said she was actually really decent about it, which made him feel even worse. There's a child, I whispered. David has a child out there. A son. She sent Dad a picture when he was born. That's what broke Dad completely. Seeing that baby's face and knowing he had a son he could never acknowledge. Could never be a father to. I thought about David over the past few months. The increasing distance, the distraction, the late nights at work that now seemed like transparent lies. He was with her. All those nights he said he was working. No, Mom. He wasn't. He was sitting in his car, usually parked somewhere random, just drinking and taking pills and torturing himself. He showed me his phone once. He had hundreds of photos of the baby that Simone had sent him. He'd never responded to a single message, but she kept sending them anyway. Milestones, first smile, first laugh. She wasn't trying to guilt him or manipulate him. I think she was just, I don't know, maybe she thought he deserved to see his son growing up, even from a distance. And you've been carrying this secret for 3 months? I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, sensitive daughter who'd always been close to her father, and saw the toll it had taken, the shadows under her eyes, the weight she'd lost that I'd attributed to college stress, the way she'd been avoiding coming home for Sunday dinners. He begged me not to tell you. He said it would destroy you, destroy our family. He said he was handling it, that he was getting help. But Mum, he wasn't. He was getting worse. I could see it every time I talked to him. He started calling me late at night, drunk, crying, saying he didn't deserve to live, saying he'd ruined everything. And you didn't think to tell me? The anger came suddenly, hot and sharp. Mia, he could have died tonight. He almost did die. And you knew he was suicidal and you said nothing. I tried. Mia's voice broke. I begged him to tell you, to go to therapy, to do something. He promised me he would. He said he just needed time to figure out how to explain it. And I believed him, because he's Dad. He's always had everything under control. He fixes problems. He doesn't fall apart. I stood up and walked to David's bedside, looking down at the man I'd been married to for 22 years. I'd met him when I was 23, fresh out of grad school, working as a junior editor at a publishing house. He'd been 28, a new associate at his firm, all ambition and charm and certainty about who he was and where he was going. I'd loved his confidence, his decisiveness. I'd built my entire adult life around this person. Now I didn't know who he was at all. The baby's name is Julian, Mia said softly from behind me. He's 4 months old. Simone lives in Cambridge. She's an immigration attorney now. Dad said she's brilliant, really principled, dedicated. She volunteers at legal aid clinics. She's not some home wrecker or gold digger. She's just a person who made a mistake and has been dealing with the consequences. How noble of her, I said bitterly. Mom, I'm not defending what Dad did. It's horrible and selfish and devastating. But I've been watching him destroy himself over it, and I didn't know what to do. He's my father. I love him. And I was terrified that if I told you, you'd leave him. And then he really would kill himself. So you sacrificed yourself instead, I said. You carried his guilt and his secrets and watched him spiral, and you let it eat at you because you thought that was somehow better than telling the truth. Wasn't it? Mia asked. If I'd told you 2 months ago what would have happened, you would have left him. He would have had nothing to live for. At least this way there was still hope that he'd get better, that we'd find a way through this. I turned to face her. And now? Where's the hope now, Mia? He tried to kill himself tonight. That's where all this secrecy got us. Before Mia could respond, David's monitor began beeping more rapidly. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. He looked around the room, his gaze landing first on Mia, then on me. I watched awareness slowly dawn, where he was, what had happened, what it meant. Catherine? His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. Don't, I said, don't say my name. Don't say anything. Please, I can explain. You have a son, I said, the words feeling foreign and impossible in my mouth. You have a 4-month-old son with another woman, and you've been lying to me for over a year. The monitor's beeping accelerated. David's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, God, Catherine, I'm so sorry. He told me, I continued, my voice steady despite the hurricane inside me. Mia. He told Mia 3 months ago and made her promise to keep it secret. So, our daughter has been protecting you, lying for you, watching you try to kill yourself, and saying nothing, because you asked her to. David's gaze shifted to Mia, and I saw the moment he understood what she'd done. Mia, you promised... You tried to kill yourself, Dad. Mia's composure finally shattered. You were going to leave me, leave us, and I was supposed to what? Just keep quiet about why? Let Mom think you died because of some random depression? Let her blame herself? I didn't want you to have to carry this, David said, reaching toward her with a shaking hand. Either of you. It was my mistake. My burden. Then you're an idiot, I said coldly. Because that's not how families work. You don't get to destroy yourself and think the damage stops with you. Everything you do, every choice you make, ripples out to everyone who loves you. A nurse entered, drawn by the alarm from the monitor. She checked David's vitals, adjusted something on the IV, and gave us all a stern look. He needs to stay calm. Whatever this conversation is, it needs to wait. After she left, an uncomfortable silence settled over the room. David had closed his eyes again, whether from exhaustion or shame, I couldn't tell. Mia stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, and I sat in that uncomfortable plastic chair, trying to process the complete destruction of my life. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Lauren. Coffee this morning? I have news. Lauren. God, what was I going to tell her? She'd always adored David and had held him up as the standard her own ex-husband could never reach. She'd tell me to think carefully, not to make any rash decisions, to consider what I'd be giving up. She'd tell me marriage required forgiveness, that people made mistakes. But this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice, hundreds of choices strung together over months. Every time David had touched me, kissed me, told me he loved me, he'd been carrying the image of another woman, another child. He'd looked at me across the dinner table and listened to me talk about my day at the press where I worked, and he'd said nothing while his secret child grew inside someone else. And then he'd pulled Mia into it. That was the part I couldn't forgive, using our daughter, making her complicit in his lies, letting her shoulder the weight of his guilt. That was beyond betrayal. That was cruelty. Mrs. Hendricks. Dr. Patel had returned, looking more serious than before. Could I speak with you again? There's been a development. I followed her into the hallway once more, my legs heavy with dread. What else could there possibly be? We found something while treating your husband, Dr. Patel said. Masses on his liver, significant ones. He's going to need a full oncological workup, but Mrs. Hendricks, I have to be honest with you, it doesn't look good. Cancer? The word came out as barely a whisper. We won't know for certain without a biopsy, but given the size and distribution of the masses, I'd be very surprised if it wasn't. And if it is, he's likely been living with it for some time. The symptoms, fatigue, weight loss, pain, they can be subtle at first. I thought about David's increasingly gaunt appearance over the past 6 months, how his clothes had started hanging off him, how he'd complained about his back. I'd thought it was stress. He'd thought it was stress. We'd both been so focused on other things that we'd missed something that might actually kill him. How long? I asked. I can't say for certain until we have more information, but Mrs. Hendricks, you should prepare yourself. Even with aggressive treatment, liver cancer has a poor prognosis once it's this advanced. I nodded mechanically, thanked her, and walked back toward David's room. But I couldn't go in, not yet. I needed a moment to think, to breathe, to somehow make sense of a situation that made no sense at all. My husband had cheated on me, had a child with another woman, had been planning to kill himself, and now he might be dying anyway. What was I supposed to do with that? I found myself walking to the hospital chapel, a small, quiet room with uncomfortable pews and stained glass that caught the morning light. I wasn't particularly religious, hadn't been since childhood, but I needed somewhere to sit that wasn't David's room or a sterile hallway. I pulled out my phone and opened my messages. There was a text from my publisher asking about the manuscript I was editing. One from our neighbour, saying she'd heard sirens last night and hoped everything was okay. One from David's law partner, Gerald, sent at 6 a.m. Catherine, heard about David, whatever you need. Call me. I stared at that last message. Gerald, David's best friend since law school, the godfather to Mia. If anyone knew what David had been going through, it would be him. I called. Catherine, thank God, Gerald answered immediately. I've been so worried. How is he? Alive, stable. That's about all I can say. What happened? Heart attack? Actually, Gerald, I was hoping you could tell me. I kept my voice level, controlled. Did you know David was using drugs? That he was suicidal? The silence on the other end told me everything. Gerald? Catherine, Look. He swore me to secrecy. He said he was handling it. Handling what? The affair, the baby, the death wish? Another silence, longer this time. You know. Mia told me. Tonight. So congratulations, Gerald. You get to keep your conscience clean. You didn't break your promise to David. But my daughter did. And she's been carrying this nightmare for 3 months because her father manipulated her into thinking it was her responsibility to save him. That's not fair, Gerald said. David was trying to protect you. By lying. By falling apart. By dragging our teenage daughter into his mess. I realized I was shouting and forced myself to lower my voice. When did he tell you? About 6 months ago, he came to my office one night, completely drunk. Started crying, telling me everything. I tried to get him to see a therapist, to tell you, to do something. He said he would. I believed him. Did you know he was using pills? I knew he was drinking too much. I didn't know about the pills. Catherine, I'm sorry. I should have done more. Said something, I don't know, but he's my best friend. He asked me to keep his confidence and I... You chose him over me, I finished, over our family. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Gerald? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like every person David told about this secret decided to keep it, and in the process, they all enabled him to get worse and worse until he ended up in a hospital bed having overdosed with liver cancer. He has cancer. They found it tonight. So that's another thing he apparently didn't tell anyone. Another secret. I hung up before Gerald could respond. My hands were shaking. I looked around the chapel, at the serene images of saints and angels, and wanted to scream at the injustice of it all. How was any of this fair? How was I supposed to navigate betrayal and illness and suicide and secrets all at once? My phone rang. Lauren. I'd forgotten to respond to her text. Ernst. Hey, sorry, I can't do coffee today, I said when I answered. Something's come up. Catherine, you sound terrible. What's wrong? And suddenly I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her everything. The hospital, the drugs, the affair, the baby, Mia's secret, the cancer. It all poured out in a rush of words that left me breathless and crying. Lauren was silent for a long moment after I finished. Then, I'm coming to you. Which hospital? Mercy General. But Lauren, you don't have to... I'm already in my car. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't move. She arrived in 15, just like Mia had. My sister, 3 years older. Perpetually organized, recently divorced, and somehow still optimistic about life. Swept into the chapel like a force of nature. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. I can't believe this, she said. David. Perfect David with his perfect life. Turns out it wasn't so perfect. Is there anything I can do? Anyone I can call? Anyone I can punch? Despite everything, I almost smiled. Not yet, maybe later. What are you going to do? I have no idea. He's dying, Lauren. How am I supposed to leave someone who's dying? He tried to kill himself, Lauren said bluntly. He made that choice. You don't owe him anything. But Mia will understand. She's a smart kid. She knows what he did was wrong. I shook my head. You didn't see her face when she looked at him in that hospital bed. She loves him. Despite everything, she loves him. And if I leave now, she'll never forgive me. Or she'll respect you for having boundaries and self-respect. I don't know, I don't know anything anymore. Lauren sat beside me, and we stayed there in that quiet chapel as the morning light grew stronger, as the hospital woke up around us, as my entire life continued to unravel. Eventually, I had to go back. Dr. Patel needed to discuss next steps. Mia needed me. David probably needed me too, though I wasn't sure I could give him anything except my physical presence. When I returned to his room, Mia was still by the window. David was awake, staring at the ceiling. He turned his head when I entered. They told me about the cancer, he said. Stage 4, probably. Maybe 6 months if I'm lucky. I sat down in the chair, maintaining careful distance. Dr. Patel said they need to run more tests. I've known for about 8 weeks, David continued, his voice flat. I found out the same day Simone sent me a video of Julian laughing. That's when I decided. He stopped, swallowed hard. I thought it would be easier this way. Quick. Less suffering for everyone. Less suffering? Mia spun around, her face twisted with anger. Dad, how is this less suffering? How is Mum finding out everything at once like this? How is me watching you try to kill yourself? How is any of this easier? I didn't know what else to do, David said, and I heard the exhaustion in his voice, not just physical but soul deep. I'd already destroyed everything. The affair, the baby, the cancer. I'm going to die anyway, Mia. I thought if I could just control how it happened, make it look like an accident or a heart attack, then at least you and your mother could move on without knowing the truth about what a failure I am. Well, that plan certainly worked out, I said coldly. David looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since he'd woken up. I loved you, Catherine. I still love you. What I did with Simone, it wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me being weak and selfish and stupid. I don't want to hear this right now. But you need to. Because whatever happens next, whether you leave me, whether you stay, whether I die next month or next year, you need to know that you didn't fail. Our marriage didn't fail because of anything you did or didn't do. It failed because I failed it. How generous of you, I said. Taking all the blame, very noble for a man who's been lying to me for over a year. I know you hate me right now. I don't hate you, David. I don't feel anything toward you at all. You're a stranger. The man I married wouldn't have done any of this. So either you were never that person, or you became someone else. And either way, I don't know you. Dr. Patel knocked and entered, followed by 2 other doctors, an oncologist and a psychiatrist. We need to discuss treatment options and next steps. Mr. Hendricks, given what happened last night, we're also going to require psychiatric evaluation before discharge. The oncologist, a tall man with silver hair and a gentle demeanor, explained the situation. The cancer had originated in David's liver and spread to nearby lymph nodes. Surgery wasn't an option. Chemotherapy might buy him some time, but the prognosis was grim. 6 months without treatment, maybe 12 with aggressive intervention. Quality of life would deteriorate significantly either way. David listened without expression. When they finished, he asked, "And if I refuse treatment?" "Dad," Mia started. "No, I want to know. If I do nothing, what happens?" "You'll become increasingly symptomatic," the oncologist said carefully. "Pain, jaundice, confusion. We can manage the symptoms palliatively, but you're looking at a few months at most. And with treatment? Possible extension of life, but significant side effects. Nausea, fatigue, immune suppression. It's not an easy road." David nodded slowly. "I need time to think about it." After the doctors left, Mia exploded. "What is there to think about? You fight. You don't just give up." "Maybe I'm tired of fighting," David said quietly. "That's not fair," Mia was crying again. "You don't get to decide you're done and leave us. That's not how this works." "Mia's right," I found myself saying, surprising even myself. "If you want to die, David, that's your choice. But you don't get to make it look like anything other than what it is. You want to refuse treatment? Fine. But you tell everyone, Mia, me, your parents, your partners at the firm, that you're choosing to die. No more secrets, no more lies. You own this decision completely." David's eyes widened. "Catherine, those are my terms. Either you fight this disease with every resource available, or you admit openly that you're giving up. What you don't get to do is take the coward's way out again and make it everyone else's responsibility to understand or explain or justify your choices." The psychiatrist, who'd been quietly observing, spoke up. "Mrs. Hendricks, I appreciate that you're angry, but your husband is dealing with significant trauma and depression. Ultimatums may not be the most therapeutic approach. I don't care about therapeutic, I said, standing up. I care about truth. I care about my daughter not spending the rest of her life wondering if she could have saved her father. I care about not waking up every day questioning everything I thought was real. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Mia, I'll be in the cafeteria. Come find me when you're ready. I left before anyone could respond, walking quickly through the maze of hospital corridors until I found the cafeteria. I bought terrible coffee and a muffin I didn't want and sat at a table by the window, watching the city wake up beyond the glass. My phone was full of messages now. David's mother, Helen, asking what was happening, his brother, Michael, more from Gerald, from my colleagues at work, from friends who'd somehow heard that something was wrong. I couldn't answer any of them. What would I even say? My husband is dying, but don't worry, he was planning to kill himself anyway, so really this is all working out quite conveniently. Oh, and by the way, he has a secret baby with his former mistress. Would you like to send a card? Mom? I looked up to find Mia standing beside the table, her eyes red and swollen. Can I sit? I nodded, and she collapsed into the chair across from me. He's agreed to treatment, she said. He called the oncologist back and said he wants to try everything. Chemo, experimental drugs, whatever they recommend. Good. He also asked me to give you this. She slid a folded piece of paper across the table. He wrote it just now. I didn't want to read it, didn't want to hear whatever justifications or apologies David thought would make any of this better. But Mia was watching me with such hope in her eyes that I unfolded the paper. Catherine. You're right about everything. I've been a coward. I've been selfish. I've destroyed the trust of the two people I love most in the world. I can't undo what I've done. I can't take back the affair or the lies or the secrets, but I can stop running. I can face what's coming with whatever dignity and honesty I have left. I'm going to fight the cancer, not because I deserve to live, but because you and Mia deserve the chance to say goodbye on your terms, not mine. I know you may never forgive me. I understand if you want to leave, if you can't stand to be in the same room with me. But please don't punish yourself by staying out of some sense of obligation. You don't owe me anything. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. I'll sign whatever papers you want. I'll move out if you want the house. I'll tell everyone the truth about why we're separating. You won't have to protect me or make excuses for me ever again. I'm sorry isn't enough. I know that, but I'm sorry anyway. David. I read it twice, then folded it and put it in my pocket. What do you want me to do? I asked Mia. She looked startled. What? This isn't just about me and your father. You're part of this family too, so I'm asking, what do you want? I want... She stopped, tears welling up again. I want things to be like they were before. I want Dad to not be dying. I want the baby and the affair to not have happened. I want to not have spent the last 3 months feeling like I was drowning. I know, honey, but we can't have that. So given the reality we're actually living in, what do you want? Mia was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I want you to be honest with me about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're going to do. I'm not a kid anymore, Mum. I don't need to be protected. I just need to know that you're okay. I'm not okay, I said. I don't know if I'll ever be okay again. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Not yet. Not while your father is... I couldn't finish the sentence. What about the baby? Mia asked softly. Julian. What are we going to do about him? It was the question I'd been avoiding thinking about. David had a son. I had a stepson I'd never met, would never raise. Somewhere in Cambridge, a woman I'd never seen was caring for a child who was genetically tied to my family, to my daughter, to my dying husband. I don't know, I admitted. What does your father want? He wants to meet him before he dies. He wants to apologize to Simone in person and see his son. Just once. And what do you want? I want to meet my brother, Mia said, and there was a note of defiance in her voice. I know that's probably the last thing you want to hear, but it's true. There's a little boy out there who's my half-brother, and eventually he's going to find out who his father was. I want him to know that he wasn't just a mistake or a secret, that someone in this family actually wanted to know him. Nah. I thought about my own family, how I'd grown up with Lauren, how we'd fought and laughed and supported each other through every crisis, how I couldn't imagine my life without her in it. Okay, I said. Okay. If your father wants to meet his son, if you want to meet your brother, I won't stop you. But I won't be part of it. That's my boundary. You can have whatever relationship you want with Julian, but I can't. I just can't. Mia nodded, understanding. Thank you. We sat in silence for a while, drinking terrible coffee and watching people come and go. Visitors carrying flowers, doctors grabbing breakfast between shifts, janitors pushing carts of cleaning supplies. All these people going about their lives, unaware that mine had just imploded. My phone rang. Helen, David's mother. I couldn't avoid her forever. Catherine, darling, what's happening? Michael called and said David's in the hospital. I closed my eyes. Helen, there's a lot I need to tell you, but I can't do it over the phone. Can you and Richard come to the hospital? Of course, we're leaving now, but Catherine, is David going to be all right? No, I said, and heard her sharp intake of breath. No, Helen, he's not. David's parents arrived within the hour, both of them looking every one of their 70-plus years as they rushed through the hospital corridors. Helen was a small woman, impeccably dressed, even in crisis, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. Richard was taller, stooped now with age, but still carrying himself with the same dignified bearing that David had inherited. They'd always liked me, had welcomed me into their family with open arms when David and I got engaged. I'd spent countless Sunday dinners at their home in Wellesley, listening to stories about David's childhood, looking at photo albums, becoming part of their history. Now I had to destroy that. We met in a family consultation room, one of those spaces hospitals designed to deliver bad news in, with soft lighting and boxes of tissues strategically placed on every surface. Mia sat beside me, David's letter still folded in my pocket like a weight. Helen and Richard sat across from us, holding hands, their faces creased with worry. Tell us, Richard said simply. I told them about the cancer first. That seemed like the easiest place to start, though easy was relative. Helen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Richard's face went grey. Stage 4, I said. It's in his liver, has spread to lymph nodes. They're starting treatment, but the prognosis isn't good. Maybe a year if the treatment works. Maybe less. My God, Helen whispered. My boy. There's more, I continued, and saw the fear in their eyes. What could be worse than terminal cancer? They were about to find out. I told them about the affair, about Simone, about the baby, about David's deterioration, the drugs, the suicide attempt, about how he'd told Mia 3 months ago and sworn her to secrecy. I watched their faces transform through shock, denial, anger, grief, all the stages I'd gone through in the space of a few hours compressed into minutes. When I finished, Helen was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Richard looked like he'd aged another decade. I don't understand, Richard said finally. David wouldn't. He's always been so responsible, so careful. Apparently not, I said, and heard the bitterness in my own voice. Catherine, I'm so sorry. Helen reached across the space between us, taking my hand. I can't even imagine what you're feeling, what you must think of us, of our son. I don't think anything of you, I said honestly. This isn't your fault. We raised him, Richard said. We taught him his values, his morals. Where did we fail? You didn't fail, Mia spoke up, her voice steady. Dad made his own choices, bad ones, but that's on him, not you. Helen looked at her granddaughter with such love and sadness. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry you've been carrying this burden, that he asked that of you. I didn't know what else to do, Mia said. He was falling apart and I thought if I just gave him time, he'd find a way to fix it. Some things can't be fixed, Richard said heavily. Can we see him? I nodded. But you should know he's not himself. The drugs, the illness, the everything. He's broken, and I don't know if there's enough of him left to put back together. We walked to David's room together, a strange procession of family members united in crisis. David was asleep when we entered, his face peaceful in a way it hadn't been when he was awake. Helen approached the bed first, her hand trembling as she touched his forehead, the way she must have done 1,000 times when he was a child. "My baby," she whispered. "What have you done?" David's eyes opened. He looked at his mother, then his father, and I watched him understand that they knew everything. His face crumpled. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry." Richard moved to the other side of the bed, taking David's hand. "We're here, son. Whatever happens, we're here." I turned away, unable to watch this scene of forgiveness and family love. It felt unearned, premature. But I understood it too. They were his parents. They'd loved him before I ever met him. Would love him after he was gone. Their relationship with his failures was different from mine. "Catherine," Helen called softly, "could I speak with you?" Outside. We stepped into the hallway, and Helen immediately pulled me into a hug. "Whatever you decide to do, we support you. If you leave him, if you stay, if you never want to see any of us again, we understand." "I don't know what I'm going to do," I admitted. Part of me wants to run as far as I can. Part of me feels obligated to stay because he's dying, and part of me just feels numb, like none of this is actually happening. "You don't have to decide anything right now," Helen said. "Give yourself time. Let yourself feel what you're feeling without judgment." Everyone keeps saying that, but time is the one thing we don't have. David has maybe a year, less if the treatment doesn't work. How am I supposed to figure out 22 years of marriage in a few months? "You're not. You can't. But Catherine, I want you to hear this. You don't owe him anything. Not your presence, not your forgiveness, not your care. If you choose to give those things, it should be because you want to, not because you feel trapped by circumstance." I nodded, tears finally breaking through. Helen held me while I cried in that sterile hospital hallway, both of us grieving different versions of the same man. When I'd composed myself, we returned to find that Gerald had arrived. He looked uncomfortable, guilty, like a child caught in a lie. David was awake and talking to Richard in low tones. Mia was back by the window, her usual position. "Catherine, Gerald started. "Save it," I said. "I can't deal with you right now. I know you're angry, but David asked me to come. There are legal matters we need to discuss." Of course there were, because beyond the emotional devastation, there were practical concerns. Insurance, wills, medical directives, power of attorney. All the paperwork of death. "Fine," I said. "Let's get it over with." Gerald pulled out a folder from his briefcase. David wants to update his will. He wants to include provisions for... He glanced at Mia, then back at me. For his son, Julian. The name hung in the air. Julian. David's other child. The 4-month-old who existed because of my husband's betrayal and who is now part of our family's legal and financial future. "How much?" I asked flatly. "A trust fund. Substantial. Enough for college, living expenses, a good start in life." "And where is this money coming from? Our joint accounts? The house? My retirement?" "Actually," Gerald said carefully, "David has a separate account. Inheritance money from his grandfather that was never commingled with marital assets. It's legally his to distribute, as he sees fit." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Of course he does. How convenient. Catherine, I know this is... Do you, Gerald? Do you know what this is? Because I'm not sure I even know anymore." David spoke from the bed, his voice weak but clear. "I don't want Julian to be punished for my mistakes. He's innocent in all this. He deserves security. I agree, I said, surprising myself. He does deserve security. He deserves a father who's present and involved and honest. But he doesn't get that either, does he? None of us get what we deserve. Mum, Mia said quietly, a note of warning in her voice. No, it's okay, David said. She's right. Julian deserves better than me. But this is all I can give him now, financial security and the knowledge that his father acknowledged him, wanted him to be taken care of. Fine, I said. Do whatever you want with your money, David. Set up the trust. But I want it clearly documented that it's coming from your personal assets, not marital property. I won't have Julian's mother coming after me later claiming she's entitled to more. Simone wouldn't do that, David said. You don't know what she'd do. You barely know her. Gerald cleared his throat. Actually, about that, Simone has asked to meet with you, Catherine. The room went silent. Everyone stared at me, waiting for my reaction. Absolutely not, I said. She says she has things she needs to explain, things about David that you should know. I don't care what she has to say. I don't want to meet her, see her, hear her voice. She can take her explanations and her apologies and her innocent baby and stay far away from me. Mum, Mia said, and I heard something in her voice, a pleading quality that made me pause. Maybe you should hear her out. Dad said she's not what you think, that she's actually really kind. Oh, well, if Dad said so, I snapped, because his judgment has been so reliable lately. I've met her, Mia said quietly, and the room went silent again. I turned slowly to face my daughter. What? Last week, I asked Dad for her number and I called her. We met for coffee. I wanted to see her, understand who she was. You met her, I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. You met your father's mistress, and you didn't think to mention this to me. I knew you'd react like this. Like what? Like a betrayed wife who just found out her daughter has been secretly meeting with the woman who destroyed her marriage. She didn't destroy the marriage, Mum. Dad did that all on his own. Don't defend her to me, Mia. Don't you dare. I'm not defending anyone. Mia's voice rose. I'm trying to help you see that this situation is more complicated than good guys and bad guys. Simone is a real person dealing with this mess just like we are. Poor Simone, I said sarcastically. How terrible for her, having to raise a baby with no support while we all suffer the consequences of her choices. Mum, please. No. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. I need air. I need to not be in this room right now. I left before anyone could stop me, walking blindly through the hospital until I found the parking garage. My car was on the 3rd level, right where I'd left it in my panicked rush to get here. Had that really been only 12 hours ago? It felt like a lifetime. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, and screamed. Just screamed until my throat was raw and my chest ached and tears streamed down my face. I screamed for the marriage I'd thought I had, for the trust that had been shattered, for the daughter who'd been forced to grow up too fast and carry secrets no child should have to bear. I screamed for the dying man in that hospital room who'd once been the love of my life and was now a stranger. When I was done, I felt hollow but calmer. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a therapist I'd seen years ago after my father died. I'd found her helpful then, direct, practical, unwilling to let me wallow in unhealthy patterns. She answered on the 3rd ring. Catherine, it's been a long time. I need help, I said. I know it's short notice, but can you fit me in? Today, if possible, I'll pay whatever. What's wrong? I told her, not everything, but enough. The affair, the baby, the cancer, the suicide attempt, the whole tangled mess of my life. I have a cancellation at 3, Dr. Chen said. Can you make it? Yes, thank you. I had 4 hours to kill. I couldn't go back to the hospital, couldn't face David or Mia or anyone else. I drove aimlessly for a while, then found myself pulling up in front of the house I'd shared with David for 18 years. A beautiful colonial in Newton with a meticulously landscaped yard and windows that gleamed in the morning sun. I let myself in and was immediately struck by the silence. This house that had been full of life, Mia's teenage years, dinner parties with friends, lazy Sunday mornings, now felt like a museum, a place that preserved a version of history that no longer existed. I walked through the rooms, seeing everything with new eyes. The photos on the walls, David and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful. Mia's school pictures chronicling her growth from gap-toothed kindergartner to poised young woman. Family vacations, holiday celebrations, ordinary moments that had seemed important at the time. All of it built on lies. I went upstairs to our bedroom, my bedroom, I suppose now. It was neat, the bed made with military precision the way David always insisted. His nightstand held a stack of legal briefs, reading glasses, a biography of some Supreme Court justice. Normal things. Nothing suggesting the chaos beneath the surface. I opened his nightstand drawer, not sure what I was looking for. Maybe evidence of his other life, proof of his betrayal, but there was only the usual detritus. Old receipts, spare change, a bottle of ibuprofen, a charging cable. Then I saw it wedged in the back corner, a phone, not David's regular phone, but a second one, a cheap prepaid cell. My hands shook as I picked it up. It was off, but when I pressed the power button it came to life. No password. And when I opened the messages, I found hundreds of them. All from one number. No name attached. Photos. Videos. Messages about a baby's milestones, developmental achievements, funny moments. I scrolled through months of documentation watching an infant grow from newborn to the chubby, smiling 4-month-old David had been too cowardly to meet in person. And interspersed with the baby content were other messages from Simone. I know you're reading these, even if you never respond. I want you to know I don't hate you. What we did was wrong. But Julian is pure and good and deserves to exist without shame. He smiled today. A real smile, not just gas. I wish you could have seen it. You should tell your wife secrets like this poison everything they touch. Believe me, I know. I got the money you sent. You don't have to do that. I'm not trying to trap you or manipulate you, but thank you. It will help. Julian looks like you. Everyone says so. Same eyes, same chin. Sometimes I wonder if he'll have your drive, your intelligence. I hope so. I hope he inherits all your good qualities and none of your cowardice. I heard from Gerald. I'm so sorry about the diagnosis. Please let me know if there's anything I can do. Despite everything, I don't want you to suffer. That last message was dated 2 weeks ago, so Gerald had told her about the cancer, more secrets, more connections I hadn't known existed. I should have been furious, and part of me was, but mostly I felt a strange kinship with this woman I'd never met. She was living with David's choices too, navigating consequences she hadn't fully anticipated, trying to protect an innocent child from the fallout of adult failures. I looked at the photos again, really looked at them. Julian was beautiful, big brown eyes, dark hair, skin a shade or two darker than David's pale complexion. He was smiling in one photo, reaching for the camera in another. In a video, he was laughing. A deep, belly laugh that sounded nothing like David, but somehow reminded me of him anyway. This was Mia's brother, my husband's son. A child who existed in the world and would continue to exist long after David was gone. I put the phone in my purse and left the house. Dr. Chen's office was in a brownstone in Brookline, the same place I had visited years ago. She greeted me at the door, a petite Asian woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanour. "You look terrible," she said as I entered. "Thanks, I feel terrible." We sat in her office, which hadn't changed. Same comfortable chairs, same artwork on the walls, same shelf full of books about trauma and grief and healing. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about the last 12 hours, about learning of David's betrayal and illness simultaneously, about Mia's secret and Gerald's complicity, and my own complete inability to process any of it. I showed her the phone, the messages, the photos. Doctor. Chen listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on a pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "What do you want?" she asked. "I don't understand." "Out of this situation. What do you want? Not what you think you should want, not what would be fair or moral or right. What does Catherine want?" I thought about it. What did I want? "I want to rewind time," I said finally. "I want none of this to have happened. I want my husband to be the person I thought he was. I want my daughter to have had a normal college experience instead of carrying her father's secrets. I want—" My voice broke. "I want my life back." "You can't have that," Dr. Chen said, not unkindly. "That life is gone. So given the life you actually have, what do you want?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do. You're just afraid to say it." She was right. I did know. "I want to leave," I whispered. "I want to divorce David, pack up my things, move somewhere far away and start over. I want to forget any of this ever happened." But he's dying, and Mia loves him, and everyone will judge me for abandoning a sick man, and I'll hate myself for being so cold and selfish and— "Stop, Doctor," Chen interrupted. "Those are all external concerns. What you think others will say or feel. I'm asking what you want for yourself, independent of anyone else's judgment or needs." "I want to not hurt anymore," I said. "I want to wake up and not feel like someone has carved out my insides. I want to look in the mirror and recognize myself." "Then that's where we start," Dr. Chen said. "Not with whether you stay or go, not with forgiveness or punishment, but with you, with healing yourself. Everything else is secondary." We talked for the rest of the hour about boundaries and self-care and the difference between obligation and choice. Dr. Chen gave me homework, a list of things to consider, questions to ask myself, exercises in identifying my own needs versus the needs others had placed on me. When I left, I felt slightly more grounded. Not better, not okay, but less adrift. My phone had been on silent during the session. When I checked it, I had 17 missed calls and twice as many texts. Most were from Mia, increasingly frantic. The last one read, "Mom, where are you? Dad wants to talk to you. It's important." I drove back to the hospital, steeling myself for whatever came next. When I arrived at David's room, I found it crowded. Helen and Richard were still there, along with Gerald. But there was a new addition, a woman I didn't recognize sitting in the chair I'd occupied earlier. She was young, probably early 30s, with warm brown skin and curly black hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, and she was holding a baby. A beautiful, chubby baby who was chewing on his fist and looking around with alert brown eyes. Simone and Julian. I froze in the doorway, and everyone turned to look at me. Mia jumped up from her position by the window. "Mom, please don't leave. Dad asked her to come. He needs to do this." I looked at David. He was sitting up in bed, looking more alive than he had since he'd woken up. His eyes were fixed on the baby, and his expression was a mixture of wonder and agony. Simone stood, shifting Julian to her hip. She was taller than I'd expected, probably 5'10", with an elegant bearing that reminded me of someone who'd been a dancer or athlete. "Mrs. Hendricks," she said, and her voice was surprisingly soft. "I'm Simone Winters. I'm sorry to ambush you like this. I know the last thing you want is to see me, but David asked, and I thought maybe it would help. For everyone." "Help," I repeated. "You think this helps?" "I think secrets help no one," Simone said. "I think hiding and pretending only make things worse. I know because I've been doing it for 4 months." Julian made a gurgling sound, and David's face crumpled. "Can I?" His voice broke. "Can I hold him?" Simone looked at me, and I saw the question in her eyes. She was asking my permission, acknowledging that this was my space, my family, my crisis she was intruding on. I wanted to say no, wanted to scream at everyone to get out, to take that baby and the evidence of my husband's betrayal far away, but I looked at Mia, at the desperate hope in her face, and I found myself nodding. Simone approached the bed carefully, adjusting Julian in her arms. "Support his head," she instructed David. "He's still learning neck control." She placed Julian in David's arms, and I watched my husband hold his son for the first time. David was crying openly now, tears streaming down his face as he stared at the baby. Julian looked up at him with those big brown eyes, completely unaware of the drama surrounding his existence. "Hi," David whispered. "Hi, Julian. I'm your—" He couldn't finish, just held the baby and wept. Helen was crying too. Richard had his arm around her, his own eyes damp. Gerald was looking at the floor, uncomfortable but present. Mia stood beside the bed, tentatively reaching out to touch Julian's tiny hand. And I stood apart from all of them, watching this scene of family connection and healing, feeling like a ghost in my own life. Simone moved to stand beside me. "I know you hate me," she said quietly. "You have every right to." "I don't hate you," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "I don't know you well enough to hate you." "Fair enough." She was quiet for a moment, watching David with Julian. "For what it's worth, I didn't know he was married when we started. He told me he was divorced, that he had a daughter, but the custody arrangement meant he couldn't talk about his personal life much. I believed him because why would I think someone would lie about something like that?" "When did you find out?" "About 2 months into the affair. I saw a photo on his phone, him with you and Mia at some event. You all looked so happy, so much like a real family. I confronted him and he admitted he'd lied. I ended things immediately." "Not immediately enough." "No," Simone agreed. "Not immediately enough. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after I'd ended it. By then, I'd already started the process of moving on, finding a new job, rebuilding my life. And suddenly, I had to decide whether to tell him, whether to keep the baby, what kind of future I wanted. "Why did you keep it?" Simone looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Why do you think?" "I genuinely don't know. Because despite everything, despite the lies and the affair and the betrayal, Julian is mine. He's not just David's mistake or consequence. He's a person who deserves to exist. And I wanted him. I wanted to be a mother. Not like this, not under these circumstances, but I wanted him." Julian started to fuss and David reluctantly handed him back to Simone. She bounced him gently, murmuring soft reassurances, and he settled. "You're good with him," I observed. "I try. It's not easy doing it alone, but I manage. My mother helps when she can, and I have a good support network of friends." "David's been sending you money?" "Yes. I told him not to, that I didn't want anything from him, but he insisted. Said it was the least he could do. I put it in a college fund for Julian. He'll need it someday." I studied this woman who'd been abstract to me until now. The other woman, the mistress, the home wrecker. But standing here watching her comfort her baby, I saw just a person. Someone who'd made mistakes but was trying to do right by her child. Someone who was as much a victim of David's deception as I was, just in a different way. "Do you love him?" I asked. "David? No. I thought I might. At the beginning. He was charming and attentive and made me feel special. But that wasn't real. It was just the excitement of the forbidden, the thrill of something illicit. When I found out he'd lied, whatever feelings I had evaporated. Now I just feel sad for him. Sad. He destroyed everything for a few months of excitement. His marriage, his relationship with his daughter, his integrity, and for what? We barely knew each other. There was no deep connection, no true love affair. Just two people being selfish and stupid. But he has to live with that. Or die with it, well, I guess, while I get to move forward with Julian. That doesn't seem fair. "Life isn't fair," Simone said. but we do the best we can with what we're given. Julian had fallen asleep in her arms, his small chest rising and falling rhythmically. I should go, Simone said. He needs a proper nap. But Catherine, she hesitated. Thank you for letting me come, for not throwing me out. I know it can't have been easy. It wasn't, I agreed. But hiding doesn't change reality, and eventually I'm going to have to figure out what to do with this reality. Simone nodded. She approached the bed one more time, letting David gently kiss Julian's sore forehead. Goodbye, David whispered. I love you. I hope you have the most amazing life. Then Simone gathered her things and left, taking Julian with her. The room felt larger and emptier in their absence. Well, Gerald said, breaking the silence, that was intense. Gerald, get out, I said tiredly. Everyone except Mia. Get out. I need to talk to my daughter and my husband. Alone. Helen and Richard hugged Mia, squeezed David's hand and left. Gerald followed, still looking uncomfortable. When it was just the three of us, I sat in the chair Simone had vacated and looked at my family, what remained of it. Say what you need to say, I told David. He took a deep breath. I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Not for a second. What happened with Simone was, it was me trying to feel young again, powerful, desired in a way I didn't feel anymore. I was turning 50, feeling mortal, and she made me feel like I still had possibilities. But it was fake. It was built on nothing. And when I found out about Julian, about the baby, I realized what I'd actually done. I'd thrown away something real and precious for something meaningless. If it was meaningless, why did it happen at all? Because I'm weak. Because I'm selfish. Because when faced with mortality and responsibility and the reality of middle age, I made the coward's choice. I ran towards something new instead of appreciating what I had. I looked at Mia. And you? What do you need to say? I'm sorry I lied to you, she said. I'm sorry I kept Dad's secret. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really just protecting him. And myself. I didn't want to face what it would mean if you knew. The fighting, the divorce, the family breaking apart. So I convinced myself that if I just held it together long enough, Dad would find a way to fix it. He can't fix it, Mia. Some things are too broken to repair. I know that now. She was crying again. But I'm not sorry I met Simone. I'm not sorry I got to hold Julian. He's my brother, Mom. He's part of this family whether we want him to be or not. And I don't want to spend my life pretending he doesn't exist. I thought about Dr. Chen's question. What did I want? I want a separation, I said, and watched both of them flinch. I can't be married to you anymore, David, not right now. Maybe not ever. I need space and time to figure out who I am outside of this marriage, outside of this crisis. I understand, David said quietly. But, I continued looking at Mia, I won't stop you from having a relationship with your father. Or with Julian. They're your family. You get to decide what that means. What about Dad's treatment? Mia asked. The chemo. I'll help coordinate it, I said. I'll make sure he has what he needs medically, but I won't be here emotionally. I can't be his wife right now, and I won't pretend to be. David nodded, accepting this. Where will you go? I'll stay in the house. You can move in with your parents, or find an apartment, or stay wherever you want, but I'm not leaving my home. Fair enough. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything settling over us like snow, cold, inevitable, transforming the landscape into something unrecognizable. I do love you, David said again. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know. I loved you too, I replied. Past tense. The man I loved wouldn't have done what you did. So either you were never that man, or he's gone now. Either way, I'm grieving someone who never really existed. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics and emotional landmines. David moved in with his parents, beginning the aggressive chemotherapy regimen his oncologist recommended. I filed for separation, not divorce. I wasn't ready for that finality yet, but I needed the legal and financial boundaries in place. Mia went back to school but came home every weekend to visit David and, increasingly, to spend time with Simone and Julian. I watched my daughter fall in love with her baby brother, saw her posting photos on social media of the two of them together, and felt the strangest mixture of emotions: pride in her capacity for love, grief for the family structure we'd lost, and a weird gratitude that Julian would know he was wanted. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects at the publishing house, staying late at the office, doing anything to avoid being alone with my thoughts. My colleagues knew something was wrong but were too polite to pry. I was grateful for their discretion. Lauren checked in daily, bringing takeout and wine and terrible reality TV to watch. She never pushed me to talk, just sat with me in companionable silence. Her presence a reminder that I still had people who loved me unconditionally. And every night I looked at the phone, David's secret phone, scrolling through the messages from Simone, the photos of Julian, the documentary evidence of a life I'd been completely unaware of. It became a strange ritual, this nightly confrontation with betrayal and innocence intertwined. 6 weeks after the hospital, David called. It was late after 11 and I almost didn't answer. "Catherine, I'm sorry to call so late, but I need to tell you something." His voice was weak, thready. The chemo was taking its toll. "What is it?" "There's another secret. Something I didn't tell you that night. At the hospital." My stomach dropped. "David, I can't handle any more secrets." "I know, but this one isn't like the others. This one might actually matter to you." I closed my eyes, bracing myself. "Just tell me." "The cancer didn't start 6 months ago. I was diagnosed 2 years ago. Stage 2, very treatable. They wanted to do surgery, radiation, the whole protocol. I said no." "What?" "I didn't want treatment. I was tired, Catherine. Tired of the pressure, tired of performing, tired of being David Hendricks, perfect husband and father and lawyer. So I said no. And I didn't tell you because I knew you'd make me fight it, and I didn't want to fight." I couldn't speak, couldn't process what he was saying. "That's when I met Simone," David continued. "I was having what I thought would be my last hurrah. Living recklessly, being selfish, and taking what I wanted without consequences because I figured I'd be dead soon anyway. The cancer would do the work of ending everything, and I wouldn't have to face what I'd done." "But you didn't die," I said, my voice hollow. "No. The cancer progressed slowly, too slowly, and by the time I realized I might actually have years left, Julian had been born, and I couldn't undo any of it. I was trapped in consequences I'd created while thinking there wouldn't be any. So everything, the affair, the lies, all of it, was because you'd given up?" "Yes." I should have been furious, should have screamed at him for this ultimate act of selfishness. But instead, I just felt tired. So incredibly tired. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because the treatment isn't working," David said. "The cancer's spreading faster than they expected. They're talking about maybe 3 months now. And I needed you to know this isn't some cosmic punishment for what I did. This is a choice I made 2 years ago, catching up with me. If I'd treated it then, I might have beaten it. But I didn't. And now I'm paying the price." "What do you want from me, David? Absolution? Permission to die? What?" "I want you to stop blaming yourself," he said, "for missing the signs, for not saving me, for any of it. This was always my choice, from the beginning." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my bedroom, our bedroom, though it didn't feel like ours anymore, and tried to feel something other than numb. Tried to access the anger or grief or betrayal this new revelation should have triggered. But there was nothing. I'd hit some kind of emotional bedrock where new information couldn't penetrate, couldn't create new wounds. I was saturated with pain, and adding more was like pouring water into an already overflowing cup. I must have fallen asleep eventually because I woke to sunlight and my phone ringing. It was Simone. Catherine, I'm so sorry to call. I know we don't really have a relationship, but I didn't know who else to reach out to. What's wrong? It's David. Helen called me. He's back in the hospital. It's not good. I was in my car within 10 minutes, driving the familiar route to Mercy General for what felt like the 100th time. When I arrived, I found Helen and Richard in the waiting room, both looking exhausted and grief-stricken. He collapsed this morning, Helen said. Internal bleeding. They're doing surgery now, trying to stop it, but the doctor said... Her voice broke. He said we should prepare ourselves. Mia arrived an hour later, having skipped her morning classes to drive home. We sat together, the three of us who loved David most, and waited. 4 hours later, the surgeon emerged. His face told us everything before he said a word. We did everything we could, but the cancer had caused too much damage. His liver is failing. We've made him comfortable, but it's only a matter of time now. Hours, maybe a day. I'm sorry. We were allowed in to see him one at a time. Helen and Richard went first, then Mia. When it was my turn, I stood outside his room for a long moment, trying to find the strength to face him. He looked small in the hospital bed, diminished by pain and illness and regret. His eyes were closed, his breathing laboured. I approached slowly, sitting in the chair beside him. Catherine, he whispered, somehow sensing my presence. I'm here. I'm sorry for everything, for the lies, for the betrayal, for wasting our time together. I'm so sorry. I know. Do you think... He stopped, coughed weakly. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I thought about Dr. Chen's words, about choosing what I wanted rather than what I thought I should want. I thought about the 22 years we'd spent together, the life we'd built, the love that had been real, even if everything else was complicated. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm here, right now, in this moment. I'm here, and maybe that's enough. David opened his eyes, looking at me with such gratitude and sadness. You deserved better than me. Yeah, I agreed. I did, but I chose you anyway, for better or worse. Mostly worse in the end. Some good too, I admitted. Mia, the home we built, the moments before everything fell apart. He reached for my hand, his grip weak, and I let him take it. We sat like that in silence, holding hands while the machines beeped and hummed around us, while his life slowly ebbed away. Yakasol. Julian, he whispered. Tell him his father was sorry, that he loved him even though he never showed it properly. Mia will tell him, I said. She'll make sure he knows. And you, what will you tell him about me? The truth, that you were complicated, that you made terrible choices, but that you were loved, and that you tried, in your way, to make things right at the end. Thank you, David said, for being here, for letting me hold your hand, for not leaving me to die alone. You're welcome. We sat together as the afternoon faded into evening, as nurses came and went, as David's breathing became more laboured and his grip on my hand grew weaker. Mia came in eventually, and I made space for her on the other side of the bed. She took her father's other hand, and we formed a chain, mother, father, daughter, one last time. I love you both, David whispered, more than I ever showed, more than you probably believe, but I do. We know, Dad, Mia said, crying. We love you too. Helen and Richard joined us, standing at the foot of the bed. And as the night deepened and the hospital grew quiet around us, David Hendricks took his last breath, surrounded by the family he'd both cherished and betrayed. He died at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in November, 2 months shy of his 52nd birthday. And despite everything, the lies, the affair, the child, the cancer, I found myself grieving. Not for the man he'd actually been, but for the one I'd thought I'd married, for the future we'd planned, for all the possibilities that had died along with him. The funeral was 3 days later. The church was packed. Colleagues from the firm, old friends, distant relatives. People whose lives David had touched in ways I'd never known about. Simone came, sitting in the back with Julian. Mia had insisted she be there, and I hadn't objected. Julian had a right to be at his father's funeral, even if he'd never really know him. I delivered the eulogy, standing at the podium and looking out at all those faces, trying to find words that were honest without being cruel. David was complicated, I said. He was brilliant and flawed, loving and selfish, strong and weak. He made mistakes, terrible ones, but he was also capable of extraordinary kindness and generosity. He loved being a father. He loved the law. He loved his family, even when he didn't show it in ways we could understand. He died too young, with too many regrets, but he also lived fully. He experienced joy and sorrow, triumph and failure, love and loss, and in his final days, he tried to make peace with the choices he'd made. Whether he succeeded is not for me to say, but he tried, and maybe that's all any of us can do. Try to be better, do better, love better, even when we fall short. After the service, people approached me with condolences and stories about David. Gerald told me about a pro bono case David had handled, getting an innocent man released from prison. A junior associate talked about how David had mentored her, helping her navigate the male-dominated world of corporate law. A neighbor recalled how David had shoveled her driveway every winter without being asked. These small kindnesses, these moments of decency, they existed alongside the betrayals. That was the truth of David. He contained multitudes, contradictions, capacity for both tremendous good and deep harm. At the reception, I found myself standing next to Simone. Julian was awake, looking around with wide eyes at all the strangers. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Thank you for letting me," she replied. "I know it couldn't have been easy." "Nothing about any of this has been easy." Simone adjusted Julian in her arms. "Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you don't want to." "Go ahead." "Do you regret it? The marriage? The years with him? Knowing how it ended, would you choose differently if you could?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "Because if I hadn't married David, I wouldn't have Mia, and she's the best thing I've ever done. So no, I wouldn't change it, even knowing the cost." Simone nodded. "I feel the same way about Julian. Even though the circumstances were awful, even though I wish things had been different, I wouldn't give him up. He's mine." We stood together, two women bound by the choices of a man who was gone, and I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. This was our reality, messy, complicated, painful but real, and we would navigate it the best we could. "Mia wants to be involved in Julian's life," I said. "To be a real sister to him. I'd like that. He should know his family." "And me?" I asked. "Do I have a place in his life?" Simone looked at me surprised. "Do you want one?" "I don't know yet, but I think I'd like the option someday, not now, but someday." "Then someday it is," Simone agreed. "Whenever you're ready." 3 months after David's death, I sold the house in Newton. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I bought a smaller place in Cambridge, a third-floor condo with big windows and exposed brick, walking distance from the Charles River. It felt like mine in a way the Newton house never had. Mia came over often, usually bringing Julian. I found myself looking forward to their visits, to the sound of a baby's laughter filling my home. Julian was crawling now, getting into everything, and watching Mia chase after him made me smile in ways I hadn't thought possible. I went back to therapy regularly, working through the layers of grief and betrayal and complicated love. Dr. Chen helped me understand that healing wasn't linear, that some days I'd feel strong and other days I'd collapse. That both were okay. I started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there with men I met through friends or work. It felt strange being single again after 22 years of marriage, but it also felt like possibility. Lauren and I took a trip to Italy, spending 2 weeks eating pasta and drinking wine and wandering through ancient cities. We didn't talk much about David. We didn't need to. The trip was about remembering who I was outside of being someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's victim, or survivor. On what would have been David's 52nd birthday, Mia and I visited his grave. We brought flowers and stood quietly for a while, neither of us knowing what to say. "Do you miss him?" Mia asked finally. "I miss who I thought he was," I said. "I miss the version of our life that existed before I knew the truth. But the actual him, the complicated, flawed, dying man, I don't know, maybe." "I miss him," Mia said. "Even knowing everything he did, everything he put us through, I miss him." "That's okay, you're allowed to." "Are you happy, Mum? Really happy?" I thought about it. My new home, my work, my slowly rebuilding life. I thought about Julian's laugh and Lauren's friendship and the way the sun hit my living room in the afternoons. I thought about waking up each day and deciding who I wanted to be, free from the weight of David's secrets and lies. "Yeah," I said, surprised by the truth of it. "I think I am." The final twist came 6 months after David's death, when Gerald called to say there was one more document to review, a letter David had left with his will, to be opened after a specified waiting period. I met Gerald at his office, wary of what new revelation might be waiting. He handed me an envelope thick and sealed, with my name written on it in David's familiar handwriting. "I haven't read it," Gerald said. "It's for you alone." I took it home and sat with it for hours before finding the courage to open it. When I finally did, I found pages and pages of David's handwriting. The story of the last 2 years of his life told honestly for the first time. He wrote about his initial cancer diagnosis, the fear and denial that led him to refuse treatment. He wrote about meeting Simone, the brief escape their affair provided, the crushing guilt when it ended. He wrote about finding out about Julian and realizing that his choice to die was no longer just about him. But the final pages were different. They were about me. "Catherine, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've had some time to process everything. I hope that time has been kind to you. I hope you're finding joy again, building a life that makes you happy. I want you to know something I never told you, not because I was keeping secrets this time, but because I couldn't find the words while I was alive. You saved me. Not in the way you tried to at the end, not by forgiving my mistakes or standing by my bedside. But earlier, years ago, you saved me just by being you. When we met, I was drowning in expectations, my parents', my professors', my own. I was on a path to success that felt like a straitjacket. And then you walked into that bookstore where I was pretending to browse legal theory texts when I was actually reading poetry, and you laughed. You laughed because I was holding the book upside down, and instead of being embarrassed or defensive, I laughed too. And in that moment, I realized I'd been holding everything in my life upside down, seeing what I thought I should see rather than what was actually there. You taught me that success wasn't just about making partner or winning cases. You taught me about Sunday mornings with coffee and crosswords, about finding beauty in ordinary moments, about loving someone so completely that their happiness becomes more important than your own accomplishments. When Mia was born, I held her and understood, really understood, what it meant to love something more than yourself. But I'd learned that from you first. So yes, I failed you catastrophically in the end. I betrayed your trust and broke your heart and destroyed our family. But before all that, you gave me 20 years of being the best version of myself. You made me a better man than I would have been without you. And when I was diagnosed that first time, when I decided to just let the cancer win, it wasn't because I didn't love you or Mia. It was because I loved you so much that I couldn't bear the thought of being diminished, of you having to care for me as I wasted away, of Mia watching her father become a shell of himself. I thought dying quietly would be a gift, sparing you the pain of the decline. I didn't understand that I was taking away your choice, your agency, your right to decide what kind of burden you were willing to bear. The affair with Simone happened during that period when I'd decided I was already dead. It was reckless and selfish, but it was also the action of someone who disconnected from consequences because he thought there wouldn't be any. That doesn't excuse it. Nothing excuses it. But maybe it explains it. When Julian was born, and I realized the cancer was progressing slowly, that I might have years instead of months, I faced a choice. I could tell you everything and fight to rebuild our marriage while fighting the disease. Or I could try to contain the damage, keep the secrets, and let the cancer do what I'd originally intended. End everything before the full scope of my failures could destroy you. I chose wrong. Again. And this time Mia paid the price too. If I could go back, if I could undo any of it, I would, but I can't. So all I can do is tell you the truth, finally and completely, and hope that someday it helps you make sense of the senseless. You asked me once, near the end, if you'd ever forgive me. I didn't answer then, but I'll answer now. I hope you don't. Not completely. Because forgiving me might mean forgetting what I did, and you should never forget. You should remember that you deserved better. That you deserved honesty and faithfulness and a partner who fought for your marriage instead of running from it. Remember that and then build a life that reflects what you deserve. Fall in love again, if you can. Find someone who sees your worth and honors it every single day. Be happy, Catherine. Be gloriously, unapologetically happy. That's my final wish for you. Not forgiveness, but joy. Tell Mia I'm proud of her. Tell her that watching her love Julian despite everything showed me what real courage looks like. Tell her she's stronger than I ever was. And maybe someday tell Julian about me. Not the heroic version or the villain version, but the truth, that I was human, deeply flawed, and that I loved him from the moment I knew he existed, even though I didn't know how to show it. Thank you for 22 years. Thank you for Mia. Thank you for making my life better than I deserved. I loved you. I will always have loved you, in whatever form love exists after death. David. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. And then I did something I hadn't been able to do before. I truly grieved. Not for the perfect marriage I'd thought I had. Not for the future we'd planned, but for the complicated, flawed, real relationship we'd actually shared. For the man David had been, both the best and worst parts of him. That evening I called Mia and read her the parts of the letter meant for her. She cried too, and we talked for hours about memory and legacy and how we carry forward the people we've lost. I'm going to tell Julian about Dad, Mia said. When he's old enough to understand, I'm going to tell him the truth, the good and the bad. He deserves to know where he comes from. That's good, I said. That's exactly right. What about you, Mum? What are you going to do? I thought about the letter, about David's wish for me to be happy. I thought about my new home, my work, the man I'd been having coffee with who made me laugh and didn't ask about my past. I'm going to live, I said, really live, not just survive or cope or manage, but actually live. Build something new. Find joy in unexpected places. Honor the good parts of what David and I had while refusing to be defined by the bad parts. He would have liked that, Mia said. Maybe, but it doesn't really matter what he would have liked. This is about what I want, what I choose, and I choose to be happy. A year after David's death, I was. Not perfectly, not without moments of sadness or anger or confusion, but genuinely deeply happy in a way I hadn't been in years. I'd been promoted at work, editing a best-selling memoir about resilience and recovery. I'd started painting again, something I'd given up in college but found myself returning to. My condo walls were covered with my work, abstract pieces full of colour and movement and life. I'd continued seeing Tom, the man from the coffee shop who'd become something more. He was nothing like David, quieter, steadier, content with a simple life teaching high school English. But he made me feel safe in a way I hadn't known I needed. Mia was thriving at school and spending every other weekend with Julian. Watching their relationship grow was one of my greatest joys. The way she'd taught him to clap and the stories she read to him, the bond they were forming despite the complicated circumstances of their connection. Simone and I had developed an unexpected friendship. Not close, not without awkwardness, but real. We met for coffee occasionally, talking about our lives, our challenges, our hopes for Julian's future. She never apologized for the affair, I never asked her to, but she acknowledged the complexity of our shared history. "You're more gracious than I would be," she told me once. "I'm not gracious," I said. "I'm just tired of being angry, and Julian deserves adults in his life who can be civil to each other." On the anniversary of David's death, I visited his grave alone. I brought flowers and the letter he'd written, which I'd kept in a drawer for months before being able to read it again. "You were right," I told the headstone, "about me deserving better, about needing to choose happiness. I'm doing that, not for you, but for me." The wind picked up, rustling the trees around the cemetery, and for a moment I felt something like peace. Not forgiveness exactly, not absolution, but acceptance. David had been who he was, complicated, flawed, human. He'd hurt me deeply and loved me genuinely, and both things were true. I walked back to my car and drove home, where Tom was waiting with dinner and Mia was coming over with Julian. My new life built from the ruins of my old one. Not perfect, not without scars, but mine. And that night, as I sat at my table surrounded by people I loved, watching Julian attempt to eat spaghetti and laughing at the mess he was making, I realized something. David's final wish, that I be happy, had come true. But not because he'd granted it, or because I'd forgiven him, or because enough time had passed, because I'd chosen it. Every single day I'd woken up and chosen to build something new from the broken pieces of what came before. My daughter had been keeping her father's secret for months, and when she finally told me, when she cried seeing him lying in that hospital bed, it had felt like the end of everything. But it had actually been the beginning of truth, of hard choices, of healing, the beginning of learning that families could break and rebuild in unexpected configurations. That love was more complicated than vows, or promises, or wedding photos. That life, in all its messy, painful, beautiful complexity, was worth living fully and honestly, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. And as I put Julian to bed in the portable crib we'd set up in my spare room, as I kissed Mia goodnight and watched Tom do the dishes in my kitchen like he belonged there, I understood David's letter in a way I hadn't before. He'd given me permission to move on, but I hadn't needed it. I'd always had the power to choose my own path. His betrayal, his death, they'd been the catalyst, but the actual work of rebuilding had been mine alone. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights, at the life I'd built from ashes and heartbreak and devastating truth. And I smiled. Because I was free. Not from the past. That would always be part of me. But free to decide what came next. Free to love again, to trust again, to build again. Free to wake up each morning and choose joy over bitterness, hope over despair, life over the death that had tried to claim everything. My daughter had cried when she saw him lying there, the weight of months of secrets finally breaking free. But from that moment of complete destruction had come this: a new family, rebuilt from honest pieces, stronger for having been broken. And that, I thought, was the real twist. Not the affair, or the baby, or the cancer, or the suicide attempt. But this, that the worst day of my life had led, eventually and painfully, to the best version of myself. That was David's final gift to me. Not his death, or his apologies, or his letter, but the catalyst that forced me to become someone I'd never known I could be. Someone whole, someone happy, someone free. I closed the curtains and turned back to my home, my family, my new beginning. And I chose again to live.